Greig Bramwell, welcome back to the Run Spesh Podcast.
Thanks very much.
We did have a little technical difficulty last time we tried to record something. It ended up sounding like a Jurassic Park movie.
Sure.
So we've fixed that. We're in our brand new studio, and I think we're a little more organised than we were last time.
It looks a little bit more professional.
It's impressive.
A little bit. We might paint the whole thing black one day.
Yeah.
But for the people watching or listening, it looks black.
It's fine, doesn't it?
I actually have some shelves to put up too, but my ADHD won't let me do it because I'm not quite sure where I want them to go yet.
We need to stick them on first so we can move them around.
So, Greig, thanks for taking some time out of this is Monday, and to timestamp this, we are recording in late August, and this will come out in mid-September, which means that we get around a couple of the releases of some shoes we can talk about, even though we know they're coming. No, to be fair, the rest of the world knows they're coming.
Yeah.
So, Greig, you are the Asics Brand Manager for New Zealand. Mm-hmm. How does someone begin their journey to end up with that job title?
It's a good question. Good one to start. Well, I suppose the history for me is I was 18, worked in a retail store, a general sports store down in Hawke's Bay, and the long story short is met Chris Britton, who's the owner of Britton Wynyard, who obviously has a distributorship for Asics. Met him because he was repping at the time. I was probably quite cheeky to him, and for some reason or not, he invited me to come to Auckland and work in the warehouse, and then I suppose the rest is history. So I went from working in the warehouse, which was a great starting or a great start to the career, I suppose, because you get to understand that. I was a little fella from Hawke's Bay going to Auckland, which was pretty scary. I drove up in my Mini with a backpack and a pillow, and that was about it. And then got into customer service, and again, sort of, I suppose, got to know the system, then got on the road for repping. And in those days, we used to sell everything. So from fishing gear to bowls to obviously to shoes and rackets and so on. And then the company decided to split the businesses up. And then I went down the fitness side, I went down the Asics side. And then sort of the rest is history.
So do you think starting in the retail space, ending up in the warehouse space, that gave you a good, I guess, kind of well-rounded look at how everyone's feeling?
Big time.
Top down?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, and I think it also gives you, without sounding too corny, I think it gives you a good respect for, you treat everybody as individuals, and it doesn't matter what they do as a job, it doesn't matter where they come from, you just got to be respectful. Nothing worse to me is when you go into a cafe or a restaurant and you see people getting treated like crap. Mm-hmm. And you don't know their background, you don't know what, half of those people are trying to, I don't know, they might be studying for a university degree, they might be trying to feed the family, they might be trying to develop their own business. So, it doesn't matter what they're doing, so just treat people with respect.
As we know, warehouse staff can completely hold everything up.
Big time.
Your whole business relies on stuff getting sent out of the warehouse. So it's an important cog in the wheel to make sure everything kind of flows nicely.
Yeah, it does.
So this title, brand manager, what exactly does a brand manager do?
Some would say look, I suppose at the end of it, we report into Australia now, which has been good. And so effectively what you're doing is overseeing the performance of the brand in New Zealand and making sure that it's achieving, I suppose, the brand expectations into Australia, but also into global. So making sure that, we're doing what the brand deserves and I suppose being a bit of a brand custodian to what needs to happen. And then really it's just working with the great team that we have in New Zealand, the great retail partners like yourself. And, we've got a lot of those and just ensuring that we're in tune with the marketplace, we're in tune with what our retail partners want and in tune with where the brand wants to go and needs to head.
Yeah.
I think Asics has been I think we all had a pair of Kayanos at some point.
Yeah.
It's
a surprisingly Kiwi brand, even though it originates from Japan.
Yeah.
Everyone I know grew up wearing a pair of Asics.
Yeah, that's really neat to hear. Yeah, I'd say there is a bit of that. I think, I think the brand's moved a lot more recently particularly. But, I think in New Zealand it's reasonably well known. For anyone that is doing sport-specific exercises or a specific sport, then I think generally the brand is known. Yeah. And I think it's known as being pretty reliable, pretty trustworthy, which I think is important as well.
Definitely things that pop to mind.
Yeah. So you obviously have quite a few people that probably report to you and a lot of information coming at you from every angle. What does the typical day look like for you to organise yourself? When does it start and how does it finish?
I try and start early because thanks to the Auckland traffic, you need to start early. So I try and get into the office just before 7. That's probably the most enjoyable time for me without being disrespectful to anyone of the team, because that probably gives me half an hour to an hour to sort of plan the day out. Generally, you plan the day out and then that bit of paper you've written down on things to do list goes out the door within sort of 8:05.
And the Muhammad Ali get punched in the face.
You get whacked. Look, the team, I mean, we're very lucky. We've got a hell of a team that's been there for quite some time, a lot of maturity there, also a lot of passion about the brand, and we've got some young ones that have come into the business that have added a lot of value to it because I'm getting old now. I think the day just, it stems between, there's peaks and trough around the product. I suppose the product selection and the new product coming through, that does button off, and there obviously is 2 ranges a year effectively, and then from there it's a conversation around keeping our retail partners happy, making sure that we're delivering the product on time, making sure we're marketing the product. We try and do a lot of localised campaign stuff. You have to toe the party line on the global campaigns, but then we always try and connect that back to the local part of the business, which I think resonates pretty well with the consumer here, versus just seeing a global campaign. We see it on the likes or the hits. So when we put out a global campaign and you get a certain amount of hit rate on that, and then as soon as you then a week or two later add in a local flavour to that campaign, it goes through the roof. Because I think people really enjoy connecting it back to, I can see that's in Christchurch, I can see that's in Wellington, I can see that's in Mission Bay or whatever it is, wherever the campaign's been shot. So that's, again, we pride ourselves on that.
I think we talked about this the other day, about how good Asics are at marketing, just in New Zealand in general, at competing against other brands. You always see Asics on the back of a bus or a billboard and stuff like that, and I feel like other brands are missing out, not marketing in that kind of way where it's just visible to everyone.
Yeah, look, in our view, it's really important. I mean, we I won't say we overinvest in marketing, but we invest. We invest a large portion of our turnover back into marketing, and that's with either athletes, it's with local events, because we want to stay local within the community of Run. And for me, even personally, I love going to those events because you get a chance to talk to the consumer. I mean, you guys are talking to the consumer every day, but we don't get to do that. We get to talk to you, and I'm not saying we value that, but we also value talking to the consumer as well and hearing what they have to say. And then we invest in a lot of campaigns. I mean, it also is off the back of the products being developed so fast, and there's so much more new innovative product coming through. So if you wanted to communicate around products right now, you would probably have a new campaign every couple of weeks. Now the product flow doesn't seem to work that way, but you could talk about something new every couple of weeks.
I think that leads on to the next question quite nicely. So over the last 40 odd years, what have been some key milestones and strategies that have contributed to this success?
Look, I think one of the key ones that was in around, I think I started in the 90s, and then in the sort of mid-90s, early 2000s, there was a gentleman called Alan Russell who ran the Asics business here, and along with Chris Britton, the owner of Britton Wynyard, they wanted to get a better grasp on what was happening with the brand. At the time, if you recall, Nike was dominant with Nike Air, and everyone was wearing them, and it was all, I'm going to sound a little bit disrespectful, but all soft and squidgy, and people loved it. It had all the bells and whistles, and we had a brand there, being Asics, and it was really firm and hard on the foot. And so we needed to get a head round why, and we had to try and explain to the consumer, I suppose, what was the point of difference. And it all came from, I know Alan he was good mates with one of the key physios up in Auckland. He had an injury. He had a good mate who was a podiatrist. Again, he had an injury, had to go and see them. And then they basically both called out that, you've got a brand here that's something pretty special, because it's working around the sort of biomechanical component of the foot and trying to help around that, minimising that injury prevention. And that's really where it started. So we started investing in education with the medical fraternity, and we now have great relationships with Podiatry New Zealand, Physio New Zealand, AUT, and we have a great relationship, which is where all the next generation is coming through. And then as you guys know, we do a lot of education with our retail partners as well. So I think the turning point was the whole understanding what the brand is, celebrating that, and then educating.
Bang on there. I think
It's interesting how you get the building blocks, because you're sitting in that office or the room talking about that stuff and you probably don't know what it looks like 25 years later and the impact of, okay, we're going to go this route. And we talked about a couple of episodes ago, Tom, where we felt like at the moment lots of different brands are all trying to do the same thing and no one's thinking maybe like you guys did in those 2000s. They're not like, what actually are we? And we're seeing that kind of, everyone's going an 8 mil pitch. Everyone's going a 40 mil in the heel. Everyone's going a aliphatic or, whatever kind of materials. And no one's going to actually, are we going to like steadfast and know what we do? Whereas I think there are probably 3, Asics included, who have some legendary product that they're saving, not bastardizing with pluses and premiums.
Yep.
And then then they're seeing some other fun stuff on the side, which is bringing in a whole new consumer. So it's interesting how 2000, late 90s, you go, okay, we're going to make this decision. And actually it still steadfast all the way through to 2025, 2030 as a global thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, well, you're touching on it. I mean, we would have always been known as a brand that would probably get the young kid that was starting up and starting to exercise, and that's generally because mum and dad's worn the product, and so they would buy it when they could influence the kids, they would buy it for the little ones. Then when the kids got an opinion and had a say and wanted to follow the latest fashions or trends or colours or whatever, we would lose them. And then they would come back again, probably through injury prevention, or come back because they got a niggle or got an injury, or they wanted to again start to take their sport seriously, and we would get them back. If you fast forward that to today, I think we've still got that product, but the really neat thing is, we've got this Blast series now and this, Speed series that is capturing a new market that we never really were capturing, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Interestingly enough, it was Nike that opened the door.
Right. I mean, Nike,
It's a full circle moment.
big time. I mean, what Nike did with that carbon fiber product and how that was the best thing for the industry. Because it just rejuvenated the industry, and then everyone woke up and went, hold on, let's go.
I wonder how the shoe designers from Brooks felt from the 80s after they'd already given it a go. But didn't have a tick on it. So for the people kind of listening that don't understand how distribution works, because we get a lot of questions. Can I have this colour? Can I have that colour? Why doesn't this model come in the country? Why can we only have 25 pairs of Metaspeed Skies? So I guess talk us through kind of how that whole system works and the logistics that go into someone walking into our shop, seeing the product on the wall they want, and us having the size that they need available from us.
We get to select from the global range, and so I suppose Australia starts and they select. They have, some of the design teams, so Jason Mansfield, he's a podiatrist by trade. He now works in Australia. He heads up the performance run space and the kids space. He sits on the design team in Japan. So there's an American, there's a European, there's an Australasian, which Jason represents us. He happens to be a Kiwi, which is always good. And then you have a Japanese. Now the Japanese get the final say. But those 4 individuals work very closely together. We then select out of that range. And I suppose the challenge you've got in New Zealand is we've only got, what are we going to say, 5 million population? Roughly. There's only a certain amount of colourways that we can do. We'd love to do every colourway. Everyone has an opinion on what is a good colourway and what's not a good colourway. I certainly get told that from my wife on a regular basis. And, ultimately we do try and provide a wide range, but you can't, as you know, you can't carry stock or you can't hold stock of every model in every colourway for a long period of time, because then your cash flow just gets thrown out the door. And, if one colourway is stronger than the other, then you don't always get it right either. So we go through that process, and we would select probably 80. I'd say we'd be doing probably 80, 90% of what's now available globally, which is a lot bigger than what we used to be. Shivers, it would have been 50%.
Yeah, you got to see the shoes out the back of the shop. People will know how many more colours we have.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we do that now. We try and control, I suppose, with yourselves, we try and work with you to go, okay, which one do we think is one we want to have more stock of, and you want to have deeper size ranges, which are the ones that we would probably call colour injections, or product that is, small releases, trying to keep the demand and trying to keep the fun in it. Because then, you are trying to keep excitement in the industry and excitement in the consumer and all of us too. So I think if you had stock of everything all year round, I mean, that's just not realistic. It's just can't be done. But I think, I think the way that the limited edition product is now working, and this speed stuff is a good example of it, that's partly because the product, they're on the edge. They're on the edge of technology. They're on the edge of materials. There's only a certain amount of materials that they can get hold of and produce fast enough. And I think, I think over time that will change as the product or the materials become more mainstream.
So when you're looking at this distribution, how do you analyse just the New Zealand market? Obviously, you've got the Australian market to compare to, and then global as well. How do you kind of nail in what New Zealand's needs or wants are to get that right for us distributors?
Look, I think a lot of that is being on the ground. I hate getting stuck behind the desk. I mean, I'm with you guys quite a bit, and I enjoy that. And I try and travel around the countryside. We have sales team members that travel around the countryside as well. I think everyone just has an ear to the ground about what's been said, what's been communicated. You see a whole lot of social media content now coming out, and there's positive comments and negative comments as well. And we do pay attention to that. And then I suppose you try and pull that all together about what is a requirement of the brand. I think the one thing that all the brands now do is they will have a global colourway. And we can sit here and debate if we like that colourway or if we don't. But it's a global colourway, and the expectation is every country would roll that global colourway out. And then we would generally back it up with a couple of others, potentially knowing that it's not everyone's cup of tea, which is the first launch of a particular colourway. So we do a lot of research by way of communicating, talking, studying the sell-through of each model, each colour, talking to key customers like yourselves and going, okay, what's working, what's not. Yep. I mean, I think the really neat thing that you're starting to see now on the wall is starting to look more exciting again. For a while, it was just black. It was just black everything.
We were talking about this maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. A bit of shoe fatigue. Yeah. Everything looks the same. Everything feels the same.
Yeah, it was getting quite boring, wasn't it? So, and I look at black is still a huge seller for most brands, because then
if you want to wear school shoes.
Yeah, that's right. And it covers more bases, doesn't it? Yeah, that's right. But it's like, I think it's fun now. I think people are making a statement with their shoes.
There's definitely an expression of personality. Yeah. And it's interesting because the colour question doesn't come up that much.
It's not as often as
it's not as often. Yeah, and like most people, they're just accepting of the fact that you have a range. They just wanted to see it, and then actually they just buy the one they're probably always going to buy. There's a subset of customers who want a particular colour, which is fair enough. That's kind of their prerogative. But I don't know if the pressure's on that so much as it was, or maybe the colours have just got better, and then so less people are complaining.
Yeah, I think there's an element of that. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think it's enough. I mean, it's amazing how you start now talking about colour again. But, we would always say, look, the colour doesn't make you go faster. It's about biomechanically, does the shoe work with the consumer? Does it fit? What works well? And then, then if there's an option of choosing a couple of colours within that, knowing that that's the right shoe for you, then great. But if there isn't, it sort of should be irrelevant.
I still think we should have a Lightning McQueen Meta Speed Edge. If we can get that one over the line with Pixar, that'd be unreal. So all these shoes are kind of coming in. We touched on marketing before. How do you decide sort of what strategies to use? What gets like sort of headline? What gets, I guess you guys call above the line, below the line? I think I've got that language right. And then the global assets. So how do you kind of organise how that looks and focus on that kind of stuff?
That's dictated a little bit from global. So we describe it as tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So tier 1 for us is above the line campaigns. So that's back of bus, it's bus shelters, it's potentially tele, it's billboards. And then we run a whole lot of social media, the social media campaign around that, and point of sale within store. So that's tier 1. And that is generally key products like Kayano, Nimbus, some of this new product, perhaps, the Super Blast, Nova Blast type product, Meta Speed sits in there. So it's like, what is the global directive? What are they wanting to focus on? The GD2000 is always part of that as well. We would then add in a local component to that, and that's where then we would then go down to tier 2, and then that would be things like Trabuco is an example. We're really strong in New Zealand, really strong in the New Zealand community, but not as strong globally, big in Europe, but not everywhere. So we would do that as a tier 2, which means it's not back of bus, it's not bus shelters, but it's everything else. And then we would have tier 3, which is then just social media hits, which is either limited edition product or limited quantity product, or it's smaller categories that we're just trying to develop. I mean, the difference in New Zealand for us is that, we're strong in football, we're strong in netball, football being probably more league, rugby. Netball, we're strong. We try and do a good job with kids. So there are other components to that. So there's a local flavour as well as it's not a dictatorship, but as well as an expectation from global that we would push those key products at a top line.
Yeah. Well, moving on to the industry and technology insights now. What does it take for a brand like Asics to partner with some of the country's biggest running events? So obviously Queenstown and other events you look after. What kind of goes into that process?
I think it's all back to just trying to give back into the community and trying to be relevant with the consumer, trying to be relevant in New Zealand. We all love looking at London Marathon, Boston Marathon, New York Marathon. They're amazing events. And now you look at Sydney Marathon, which is now one of the world majors. I think that's coming up very soon this weekend.
We've got to cover it on Wednesday when we record for this week's episode. Having Kipchoge, I mean, even though he's an athlete of another brand, surely the buzz that's going to be around Sydney would be phenomenal. Yeah,
it's huge. I was talking to the Aussies, or talking to the CEO last week, and he's like, that's very clever from, I don't mind saying, it's very clever from Nike because it's ambush marketing, really. But on the bigger scheme of it, you're bringing a world-class athlete to an event.
Because Hassan
that's right.
on the female side, you're going to have
fantastic,
arguably the best marathon runners in the world.
like that's you couldn't get better.
No.
And so, from our perspective, we think it's really important to invest back into that, into the market. We also have a relationship with Weet-Bix Triathlon, which that's the next generation come through. And if anyone's had kids and gone to that, it's an amazing experience. And so we will, as far as I'm concerned, I think we will always invest in the, in events, because that's our one chance to talk direct with the consumer.
Challenges. There's always challenges. What do you reckon some of the most significant challenges currently facing the sports footwear or running footwear industry at the moment? Because we're kind of flying.
Look,
parts are.
I think that's right. I try and stay half full here versus half empty, but it's, I think one of the biggest challenges is the economic environment. The current economic environment in New Zealand and also even in Australia. It's not that pretty for some people out there, and I feel for people in that entertainment space and that fashion space, and for retail right now, that's tough going.
Yeah.
That's seriously tough going. And, for restaurateurs and so on, that's tough going. So, we're respectful of that. We're always a little bit, we try not to sing from the treetops, because for some reason right now in these sort of, if you want to call it economic downturns, the sports industry seems to go quite well, particularly when we're talking about, running product, football product, or, rugby league product, netball, sports-specific products. Because I think people sort of go, okay, well, how do I get my entertainment? How do I enjoy myself? How do I stay mentally well, if you like, and as well as physically well, and they get out and exercise?
I'm just going to derail this for a second, Tommy. I'm not going to be asking this question. Without getting political, obviously, there's this tariff word has kind of been thrown around. We're looking at shoes on the wall with nothing sort of under $260. Are prices going to go up? And B, is that a concern that we are maybe starting to price people out of what would have been an entry-level kind of footwear?
Yeah, look, it's definitely a concern. Yeah, there's no question that's been already discussed. I mean, I think, I'd be very surprised if prices in the US don't go up. They will. They definitely will. But the bigger issue there is, the strength of our dollar against the US, and that's, because probably what people don't understand is you're hedging or buying the US dollar, in some cases 12 to 18 months out. So, we're buying US dollars right now and trying to set our pricing for back half 26. And so that's where it becomes really difficult, because I don't know what the US dollar is right now. It's probably 58.5, 59. And then when that product comes out in July 26, everyone, let's think positively and say it's up in mid-60s. Everyone say, well, why have the prices gone up, or why haven't they come down? Or it's because you're hedging so far out. We're very conscious. We now every 6 months play a game around what's the price in pound, what's it in euro, what's it in US, what's the Aussie price as well, and then we try and get some consistency within that. I think the one that's inconsistent though is that people look at the US pricing and that doesn't have VAT, doesn't have GST included on it.
Yeah.
So they lose sight of that. And the reason it doesn't is because through the US, the VAT differs from state to state, whereas for us, it's 15% GST. It's simple. So, yeah, look, we do pay attention to the pricing, and therefore in some cases we would, we would make sure that the pricing is competitive from a global standpoint. And I think we have to as a duty for the brand as well. We can't be miles off the mark here.
Because we kind of talk about no runner left behind, limited barriers to entry, all that sort of stuff. And it does, we don't want it to become, sorry to all the cyclists out there, we don't want it to become road cycling, where it becomes more and more difficult for people to enter with good product.
No, I think that. I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's dead right. So
it's probably up to the retailers to put pressure on, to then put pressure on the brand distributors, put pressure on the brands, put pressure on everything to go. Actually, we need this. At this if we can and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's right. But I think the brands are always looking to try and have I don't like the word, but it's like an entry price point, an entry into what is a really nice running shoe at a fair and reasonable price to get you going.
Yep.
And then obviously as you pay more, you get more.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily get more durability. There's a misunderstanding on that.
Nope.
But you get a different experience.
I think a lot of people are doing that now, and they value the experience they get from a shoe, so that I feel like a little bit more willing than maybe previous years to spend that little bit extra and get a nice feeling shoe. I know we're lucky, obviously, but you have a lot of people talk about how other things are so expensive, and then they get into running and they're thinking it's cheap. And I was like, yeah, it is relatively cheap though in comparison. Like I've just started doing triathlon, and don't do that if you ain't got like some sort of backing, because it's hella expensive.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you are a recreational runner, and I don't know, what do we reckon? 3 shoes a year for a recreational runner if you're just wanting to stay fit?
2 to 3. Yep.
Yeah, 2 to 3 shoes a year.
Yeah.
So, and if you say that varies between $250 and $350.
Yeah.
That's reasonably.
The way I look at it as well, this is kind of like off topic, but people, and I guess in my age demographic, drinking is a huge thing. And if you're going out and spending $50-$60 every weekend at a bar or drinking and going there, it's like, well, if you take away that, then you have your extra money for your shoes. Yeah. So it's quite it's all relative, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it definitely is. And I actually think even on that, you look at the younger generation coming through, and again, I'm sounding old, but I think the younger generation coming through are valuing their fitness and health and well-being a lot more than the older buggers like me.
There's definitely a shift.
Yeah, there's a shift, which I think is really neat to see, which is where all these run clubs are coming from. It's a way of meeting people, feeling safer, and they're valuing their health and well-being over having a good night out.
Yeah, exactly. It's just where you want to spend your time and money.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So the next one we had was, how has the way Asics communicates with its consumers evolved over the years? And I guess that kind of touched on it a little bit, but what have you seen that's been the biggest changes in the last, 10, 15 years? And I guess social media would be one of them, but
I think it's the complexity of the communication. There's not one thing that you now do to get your message across. You're having to be on every platform available. And I'm not going to try and pretend I can name all the platforms, because I've got a fantastic marketing team that know way more than I do on that space. But you are looking at a lot of different platforms to get that communication out. I think one of the challenges for the consumer, and I think one of the challenges for the brands and us in the industry, is trying to keep that simple. Yeah. Trying to allow the consumer to figure out, even look at our brand. We've got all this new product coming through. Well, who's it for? So who does it suit? What's it for? What's it going to do? What am I going to feel in it? Is it going to help me? And I think our job is to try and keep that communication simple, which right now is becoming tricky because it's moving so fast.
And you have a lot of, like Tom and I, talking dumb heads, maybe saying other things than the brand is trying to say. There's kind of this mess of, you could have someone with 3.5, 4, 5 million followers saying something that isn't quite what the brand thought it was. Like, is Is that a challenge?
Yeah, that is. But again, it's healthy though. I think then at least people are talking about the product and talking about fitness and well-being, and without it getting all deep and meaningful, it's also mental health, isn't it? This whole fitness piece, which I think, if I look at what the brand's trying to achieve around that, it's not saying that we want to have the best athletes in the world, but I think what you see a lot is we don't necessarily celebrate the best athletes in the world all the time, or we try not to necessarily just put them on a pedestal constantly. It's actually about celebrating the average person who just wants to go out there and have a jog, or just wants to go out and walk the dog, or go and have a run with their kids.
I would commend that sort of Auckland, Queenstown marathon weekends, and kind of what comes across socials is that like grassroots fun.
Yeah.
For you guys to be sitting 800 metres from the finish line of Auckland Marathon last October, counting shoes and doing your bits, and then to get a cheer, like that's some grassroots stuff for the biggest running brand in New Zealand to be sitting on the side of Custom Street East.
Yeah, that's right. But if I recall, I think I was screaming at you saying, hurry up, get going, get some guys up your ass.
I was trying. I was definitely trying. Did manage to get that one over the line. So the innovations are wild. We are you've been in a little longer than I have, but we have seen an acceleration.
Oh, yeah.
In your opinion, what's the biggest innovations at any level that we've seen sort of in the last, 5 to 10 years?
I think it's just materials, midsole materials, what they're doing to try and give the consumer an experience, try and, and at whatever level. That's at the top elite level where, you guys play in that space versus the recreational person. I think I was saying to Tom before, we'll get on to one of the shoes, but I went for a run last weekend in a pair of the new model, and honestly, I was grinning from ear to ear within the first couple of Ks as I'm going, this feels like I'm cheating. Yeah. And I mean that in a really nice way, but it was like it just felt astonishing and felt so much fun because you're just the responsiveness, the energy, the bounce, whatever words you want to use, what you're getting out of these materials now it's amazing.
Well, forever running was a slog, right?
Yeah.
And now actually
it's a fun thing.
It's kind of fun to do.
Yeah.
Because it's the equipment we have is caught up to some of the other sports.
Yeah, I agree.
In the world where you think, you jump on a 5 kilogram carbon road bike and you're like, fuck, this is cool. And we didn't have that until 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and I think we are in I'm sort of trying to be politically correct, but we are in an era, I think, of running shoe technology and footwear technology, which is probably the most exciting it's ever been. Certainly in my time.
Yeah. That lends perfectly to this. What's next?
Because I wrote the questions.
Yeah. What's next? What do you think is obviously the foams and stuff and the carbon plates? Do you think there'll be another revolutionary upgrade to the running market, or what can you see in the near future?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm not sure if I can answer that.
I don't even know if we can answer that too. Yeah.
I don't know. I think we had a bit of a conversation off air around this. I think if you talk about some of the testing that goes on and having variation of different body weights, shapes, sizes, male, female testing.
Yeah.
I do wonder, and I don't know anything here, so I'm not preempting it, thinking I'm clever here. But I wonder if there is, is it going to head to where there is the same shoe, but it's different, has different materials or different densities depending on what that body weight is.
I reckon, this is just me spitballing, but you'll be able, eventually they'll get to this, you'll be able to select your size and it will be like fill in your weight, fill in your PBs and whatnot, and then through that process, the brand will be able to develop a shoe with the molds and everything to your specific specifications.
Yeah, it's sort of like a customization, isn't it? Yeah. Because it's not necessarily by weight, but if you might be a heavier, you might hit the ground heavier, therefore you might want a slightly firmer feeling or a softer feeling, whatever it is. Cadence. That's right. So, I mean, because if you look at the shoes now, each shoe that we're producing has got a consumer in mind.
Yep.
Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't go outside that consumer, but they're producing it, and all brands do the same. They're producing it for a particular consumer in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what does that look like in 10 years? It could be really interesting.
Scary.
I mean, I've been harping on at this, and maybe some people are listening and some people aren't. I feel like after seeing a couple of the next iterations of models, people are listening, or maybe they're already ahead. But the stability category has long been left behind because we've been trying to figure out how to make new foams, mold new foams, cut new foams, and then how they react together. And we talked about it, Tom, in our Soulmates episode with the Sky versus Edge and the degradation of two different types of foams into one shoe, and they don't last the same amount of time. Now, we know that from Meteor posting from yesteryear, and it's like, how do we take these fun, exciting kind of foams, and I know you probably can't talk about Kayano 33, so I'll avoid it, but how do we take those fun foams and put it into a package where someone does need a little bit of foot stability?
Yeah, like I can't talk about Kayano 33, but I've seen it, and I think where you're heading with this is where they are heading. So I think I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to figure out, with all these new foams going on, how much fun and how exciting they are to wear these new foams, that they have to roll into. At some point, they will start filtering into, at what we would describe as our Legends product or our mainstream daily trainers. And I think you'll see a combination of those various materials being used, because you don't want every shoe to be a super foam shoe. But I think you'll see it moving.
Some fun stuff. And that does lead us into the Legend product. So Kayano 29 was a banger of a shoe. It was a pretty good shoe. You see stuff 18 months ahead of the market. 18 months to 2 years ahead of the market. You see Kayano 30, you've probably got to keep your mouth shut for, 6 to 12 months. And you're having some internal conversations probably with Jace and yourself and some of the other guys. And you've been communicating one particular way to everybody. And we've sold shoes the same way we've sold shoes since Laurie decided to open Frontrunner in the 1970s. And then I guess the flagship product of that whole story, like I mean that in the most respectful way possible, is the Kayano was everything the specialty retail running market was, and all its features and what it was trying to achieve. That gets changed overnight. Well, for us overnight, for you 18 months in the making. What was that like?
Horrific.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was, that was, but you reflect now in a good way, but that was scary. Yeah, because and funny enough, I'm showing my age, but I've been with the business for 30 years, so I sold in the Kayano 1, which shows my age.
You're doing better than me.
Yeah. So, but and you look at the history of that Kayano, and you look at exactly what you're saying. That dual density midsole, or I think over the latter years we all realised that the word control was keep getting used, and that's not true, because you can't control those movements. You can help mitigate it. You can slow the rate down. You can make some adjustments to it, and I think. So if you look at them, what they tried to achieve, and what they have achieved, it was because it was Nimbus 25 as well, if you recall, and that was dramatic too. So those two shoes in 1 year, those were the biggest shifts from a brand perspective. But we reflect back now and go, I think you've got to tip your hat to the powers that be in Japan, and so they got it right. They needed to move. I think the industry was moving, and I think they were starting to realise that it was getting a little stale, perhaps, or they needed to get their A into G and get going. And it's easy to say from me sitting afar saying that, but they needed to do that, and I think they have. I think they've done a great job. But that, I'm sure internally, because I wasn't privy to those conversations, but I'm sure internally that some of those conversations would have been robust.
I would love to be a fly on the
Hell
wall.
yeah.
That would have been amazing.
Wow.
Because I think with Nimbus, that was a less of a shock, maybe not for Asics, but for consumers, because we'd had, Clifton and Bondi and Glycerin or whatever had kind of already gone that way, and in a way you were kind of 2 years behind maybe. But no one had tried to completely change a stability shoe. No. And people still weren't, we'd kind of talked about sidewalls or a bucket seat with Clifton. We'd kind of talked about wider midfoots, but everyone was worried it would be too heavy. We'd kind of talked about rocker, but no one really knew what that meant, and everyone thought it was kind of toe spring or whatever, and those two things aren't the same. So I think there was some shocked customers. There was some really curious customers.
Yeah. And
the curious customers, I think, outweighed the shocked ones.
Yep. Yeah, I always have I think I've mentioned this to you, Oscar, it's only a personal view. There's a little bit of science to back it up based on numbers, but there's always a fluctuation of 10% is what we always talk about. So a new model will come out and there'll be 10% of the population that wore that model won't like it, and then there'll be 10% that didn't like it now do like it. Now that's a loose number. But it's like you're always going to get that. But when Kayano 29 to 30, and that when that happened, that was that we're all sitting there with a lot of interest, going, okay, how's it going to work? How's this going to respond? Is this?
But I guess you go back to that late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah, educate the medical professionals. Yeah, educate your retail staff, and you guys did a pretty good job rolling that out. And then from there, the customer gets educated. People start trying it. They actually go, oh, there's features in here that are different but doing the same thing.
Yep, I think that's right. And I think the medical fraternity, they certainly embraced it, because I think they had actually moved as well. I think they'd moved from the words blocking, controlling, medial movement. That had long gone in their vocabulary. So when Kayano 30 came out, and we certainly made sure a lot of those individuals tested the product. We tried to get as many of you guys to test the product and say, what do you think? And I think it's refined already. If you look at Kayano 32 from 30 to 31, now into 32, I think 32's a way better product. And it's sort of like that Series 1, Series 2 car type thing, isn't it? We don't generally buy the Series 1 because they'll tweak it a bit in 6 months, and you get the Series 2 and Series 3. I think footwear is a bit the same.
And we debated about whether or not you should have kept Kayano the way it was and put another shoe in and let one fight off the other, and we'd had internal conversations about it. But I think giving it that 30, giving it the 31, giving it the 32 set, and Asics is completely committed to this being the way we're gonna do this, and we're gonna work on it and refine it. Because I think when you go to 1, people go, I'll wait till 3.
Correct.
And so you go, no, this is it.
Yeah, I agree.
We think this is going to work.
Yeah.
And we want you guys to come along with us.
Yep.
Is that kind of what you thought?
Yeah, definitely. And I think they test a lot. From a brand perspective, we do testing here. We have a couple of people around New Zealand that do, they do pretty high mileage on a weekly basis, which gives us a good indication from their perspective. But that's a small sample. But if you take that around the world, it may sound like a small number, but there'd be in excess of 100 people testing the shoes before they hit the market. That used to be, a few years ago, that used to be half a dozen. Not just our brand, all brands. They'd test it on half a dozen to a dozen people and say, rightio, we're off we go. The tests have been good. I mean, you think about that, that's pretty frightening.
Especially with the dollars and cents we're talking.
Yeah, that's right. So they're testing, as I say, well in excess of 100 people now, and it's different speeds, different body shapes, different male, female, whatever you think. It's like who hits the ground hard, who doesn't. So they are doing a lot of that. So we generally have a fair bit of confidence, or a lot of confidence, when it's going to hit the market. We sort of know what's going to be said. But again, everyone's entitled to their opinion, and some people love it, some people don't. I mean, I thought the one thing that came through loud and clear on Kayano 30, I openly admit this, was that, and I don't want this to be taken in a disrespectful way. If you're a female consumer and you're looking down on top of your shoe and you're seeing this big bulbous midsole sitting out, flaring on both sides, for some people, they didn't like it. Yeah. It just looked too chunky.
It was tough.
Yeah, it's tough. And so, if you now look at the 32 and you look down on it, it looks really sleek, really refined. And the product, I think, again, is performing way better.
And the shoe designers and the biomechanics are learning as we go, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If we had all the answers, we'd make no changes.
Yeah, correct.
Say we, anyway.
No, that's right.
Yeah, and so you're seeing slightly taller sidewalls in the hind foot.
Yep.
You're seeing a better shape through the midfoot.
Yep.
You're seeing some sidewalls in the forefoot to stabilise. You're kind of seeing different types of toe spring to either increase or decrease the speed that happens, so people can or cannot control it.
Yeah, I agree.
And they are working on it, which, and I think more and more, this is my 16th year selling shoes, longer actually, almost longer. In the last 5 or 6 years, the changes to most shoes make sense.
Yeah.
I kind of felt like 2014, 15, 16, 17, some changes happened and you were like, what?
Yeah, why?
Yeah, what has happened? Right. But it's almost like the brands are growing with the consumer more and more now.
Yeah, I think for a while the brands, I think the brands were just trying to put more and more stuff into the shoes. Because a component we have to call out here is there is the sustainability perspective. Yes. This is environmental, and this is all brands. We all have a responsibility to ensure that millions of shoes don't constantly end up in landfill. because there are too many componentries to the shoe. There's too much gluing those components together, and therefore it's not good for the environment. So, I think the brand Asics is working really hard on that. And we're not the only brand doing that. I think a lot of the brands are now working really hard on making sure that, we are conscious of the environment, conscious of trying to make sure that these shoes can be, over time, 100% recyclable. I actually think that's a really good thing. And Asics right now, they finally have a glue, and they're using it on one or two shoes. It'll eventually roll out, but they have a glue now that once you put it under extreme heat, so if you've got a pair of shoes, you gave them back, and we won't be far off this. You'll give your old shoes back. We will then give that to a plant. They will heat those shoes up, and that will allow us to separate the upper from the outsole, which then means you can break down those materials, recycle, use them again. I think that's a good thing.
Has to be with the amount of shoes produced globally.
It's horrific.
Across everything.
So next we have the Blast range. What were your first thoughts when you saw such a dramatic change to Asics kind of history?
Look, I think we were confused.
Yeah.
In New Zealand.
That meeting was wild. The first time you guys showed us, was it Dynablast first?
Yeah.
So what is this Dragon Ball Z looking?
Yeah, and I reckon that was a good. You think back about that meeting. That was a classic, and that meeting that got railroaded because all of us were confused, and we were internally. I don't think Global was confused. I think Global knew what they wanted to achieve, and probably that was a good lesson for me. I think probably the mistake that we made is we tried to overthink it, and we tried to position the shoe to what we thought it would be versus actually just going, this is what Global's trying to achieve. They want to get into a younger demographic. They want to have a bit more fun with the shoe and make the shoe a bit more lively, and and it's for a person perhaps is not necessarily doing big high mileage, but they want to be slightly quicker, responsive, doing their 5-10K stuff. And we probably railroaded that a bit because then in year 2, when the Nova Blast started coming out, the consumer was actually telling us what it was for. So the consumer, I reckon, had figured it out before we had sort of figured out where this sits.
I remember it vividly, standing in the back of the shop with Hamish, and some other brands were having some problems in that space. And I remember saying to him, because we'd seen Nova Blast in November, and this must have been February. And I remember I was going, mate, I feel like we've made a mistake. Like, I think this is going to be all right.
Yeah.
I don't think version 2 is there, but I think we should have some.
Yeah.
And he's like, what do you mean? It's like, you guys were all, and I was like, I know, and I thought about it, and I'm always willing to eat humble pie. Yeah. And I'm like, nah, I think I should get some. Maybe just men's, because men's like to kind of, the male customers like to try some stuff first, and then the females are a little on the fence, and then they'll kind of buy into it a little bit later. And so we got some for April, and we sold the first lot in about 3 days.
Yeah.
And I remember Hamish coming back in the week later and he goes, shit, you might have been right. And I was hoping so.
Yeah, I think that's so true. My daughter, she's back from the US, and she's trying to stay fit, and went to one of the run clubs the other week, early morning run club. And I said, how'd you find it? What'd you think? And she went with a friend. She said, it was a lot of fun, and we got introduced, and they called us out because we were the first time we turned up. And then I remember saying to her, I said, what was everyone wearing? She said, everyone was wearing Nova Blast or Super Blast. And I went, you're kidding me? She said, yeah, everyone. And I'm exaggerating a bit there, but that was her words that came out of her mouth. I'm sure not everyone was, but in her mind, that's all she saw.
So should we talk a little bit about shoes?
Yeah, why not?
Because we have some shoes. Now, Mega Blast and Sonic Blast drop September 1. Yep. So they would have been in the market about 2 weeks by the time this gets released. And then we've got some of the Metaspeed Ray, which unfortunately, will be available on the Asics website.
Yes.
For this back half.
Yep.
And then we limited retail partners.
Yep.
For February 2026.
Correct.
Cool. We're just showing here because it's that leap, funnily enough, play on words, and forward in geometry and chemistry. So I think it's important to have that sitting there and talk about it. But talk us through Mega Blast and where that fits.
I think the secret to Mega Blast, one, it's in that super shoe, critical foams, all the new, and they call it Flight Foam squared turbo material, but it's an ATPU material. The idea behind this is if you look at it, it's trying to give that, I think we would describe it as saying it's the person who was an early adopter into Super Blast. This is going to be something that they're going to want to really try out because the response to this midsole material compared to, say, a Super Blast. So this is giving you they actually talk about it in the Institute of Sport, but they talk about it's giving you 32.5% more energy or more bounce or more return in the midsole, which that's a big number.
It's a lot.
This was the shoe that I actually I took for a run last weekend and just started giggling when I started running because I just couldn't get over it. And I'm a plotter compared to you guys, but it was so much fun. So you're getting this real responsive, bouncy material. We do believe that this shoe is, it's going to cater a wide range. So it's that daily trainer, long run, easy runs, recovery run. I'd say you can get up tempo and want to really go. I do think it's probably a little more suited to the person that perhaps is a little more efficient, has a slightly better cadence on there, because I think then they'll get the most out of it. They can really get going. But it's something extremely special. And so it sits above your day-to-day daily trainers, being your Kayano and Nimbus type scenario. But it just gives you an experience that is really hard to explain. You literally have to put it on to believe it.
Yeah, I have. I'm a fan of the aliphatic TPU, and maybe on an episode at some stage, Tom and I can geek out about foams. But what's interesting is it's kind of labelled that, but you've got a couple of different versions of the same foam, and we were talking about durometers and whether or not we're going to start throwing out the density readings because of the way the foam reacts under compliance or heat or pressure or force or whatever you kind of want to term. So sonic blast.
Yep.
And the customers are going to be coming in asking for the blast, and we're not going to know which. Instead of gel, I've had the gel one. They're going to come and say I've had the blast one. So sonic blast is interesting. Now I read somewhere, and I'd probably agree with it. People are saying this is a semi-plated Nova Blast. Is that kind of what you'd agree?
Yeah, I would. I mean, it does have you talk about that durometer reading. It is, again, you're talking about the ATPU top layer and then Flight Foam Blast bottom layer. So the Flight Foam Blast Max, bottom layer is the same as what's in Nova, but it is a slightly firmer density. I think for one of two things. One, to give you a more responsive, firmer feel, also to protect the top layer. And then you've obviously got a P-Bax plate just through the forefoot sitting in the middle of those two. I think the beauty of this is that it's not everyone suits wearing a carbon plated shoe. Not everybody wants a carbon plated shoe. Not everybody can get up and go to get the best out of that carbon product. So with this one, you can be doing perhaps a more recreational speed. So this is probably more suited to somebody like me, unlike you guys, because if I'm running 5-minute Ks or 5.5-minute Ks, I can still get some fun out of this. If I then want to get up and go and get a bit quicker and get under 5-minute Ks, then it's going to respond better. But I'm probably a good example, probably because I'm too old. It's like, am I really going to get the most out of carbon? Probably not, because I'm not running fast enough.
Especially now we see pretty much all carbon product in that 450 to 500 bracket. Yeah. So this is going to sit at a New Zealand retail at 350, 330?
350, 330, 350.
So again, it's kind of trying to make that accessibility piece. So you're getting the fun top tier foam, which I think they're saying aliphatic TPU is like 93 to 96% of your energy back, something like that. And that's unshoed and kind of depends on geometry and stuff, but whatever's like the numbers significantly more than PBA, like 8 to 12%. So you're going to get all that fun stuff out and a shoe that you can kind of bend and get off the front of.
Yeah, that's right.
And also for the guys who are racing in carbon, they don't want to ruin their carbon. And they're doing their workouts and stuff, and they want to feel a similar foam.
Yeah, that's right. And then you even look at the back of the heel too. It's got a gruntier heel as well. So if you start to fatigue again for that person that perhaps not as quick, is more efficient, they're going to get a bit of protection out of it as well. But I think this is quite a special little shoe. So we would say this is daily trainer up into up tempo and so on. Whereas we would perhaps, I don't think we would, for the general public, we wouldn't put this into daily trainer space. We'd put this into up tempo, get going potentially into race day for some of those people.
I think we'll see. Well, we are already seeing a little bit of a shift of people understanding the demands on the body to run in carbon. And that's like longitudinally and torsionally and all that stuff to try and pick it, like drive force and pick it up. And there is people are seeing the difference now. They've had a carbon one, they've tried a plastic plate, and they've gone, actually, I run better in the plastic one. For longer, even though maybe the carbon one feels better for 100 meters.
Just a bit more forgiveness.
Correct.
Yeah.
So Mega Blast, Sonic Blast, and Super Blast. Now, we probably can't talk about it, but Super Blast will get updated in the front half of 26.
Yeah, it gets updated to Super Blast 3 in March.
Yeah, so if anyone has, and there's lots of comments across our social channels and YouTube, they're going, Mega Blast and Super Blast don't make sense together. Just wait.
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
They do when we get to
Yeah, they
February,
do.
and obviously from a factory point of view, you can't update all these shoes at once.
No, you
so
can't.
sometimes the inline doesn't make as much sense as it will eventually.
No, that's
is that
right.
fair?
Yeah, no, that's dead right. I mean, we're actually pulling together the sort of staff training package now to go, okay, where do these shoes all sit? And I suppose what we're now trying to describe, we're sort of starting to describe what Super Blast will be like in March and where that sits compared to Mega Blast, compared to Sonic Blast. So, I, in our view, I think Super Blast will become that slightly softer, spongier feel that is for more of a, it's probably giving you perhaps a bit wider range of sort of a more commercial opportunity for that person that perhaps...
a Nimbus with fun foams.
Yeah, that's
maybe.
right. I think that's right. Yeah, so it's you can do your daily training in it, you can do your recovery work, and I think you can go into up tempo for that more recreational runner. But I would say if you're getting into your running and you're starting to get a lot more experience, you're going to go into here and into Sonic more. So Super Blast is starting to go into exactly what you said, play in between that everyday trainer, recreational type.
We've kind of got like F1 with a comfy seat. Super Blast 3 becomes McLaren with leather seats and a gearbox rather than the hand controls.
Yeah, I think that's right.
It's just, you're probably more likely to drive one to the supermarket than not.
Yeah, I think it's a good description.
But this one is full blown
Fast.
And so we're talking about Metaspeed Ray. This is I think this is an accumulation of all the data points and all the tech that we've kind of had. Talk to us about this, because this is the first time Tom and I managed to lay hands on this, and it looks like you might have already had a stride out. So,
Tom.
What do you think?
I think I just think it's fantastic to see what's going on, because I think the Metaspeed Sky and Edge now with the two different layers of material and where that flight foam leap material is sitting. This is obviously full flight foam leap. So again, it's that ATPU material. It's the responsiveness of it is unbelievable. And then I think also where the plate is positioned, again, being sort of in the, sort of in the midfoot area of the forefoot back into the midfoot area of the heel. So again, it's, if you want to get up and go, you can go. But if you're really getting the best out of it when you're getting to that midfoot into forefoot. You can see the way the heel set up is, we're not designed for heel striking on this puppy. So you need to go. But yeah, the response has been great. It sits at, what was that weighing at?
It was 126 grams, for a mid-size and a half.
9.5.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's the lightest shoe out there at the moment.
Yeah, correct.
So yeah, it's something, to me that epitomises sort of where the brand has come from in the last 4 to 5 years. Because they got a slap in the face. They were getting beaten up.
Well, that original Meadow, whatever it was, people were calling the Meadow Walker.
Yeah, that's right. They were getting beaten up. They really were. And then look, again, back to Nike did a great job to revitalise the industry, and now everyone's onto it. And I think we've moved extremely fast because it's a good example from the brand lead, the president of the business. He's on the design team, or he's on the think tank team of this racing product, because he wants to lead the way in this space, which is really neat to read. That's why I love reading that stuff out of Global, because they are saying we must be at the pinnacle of this performance product.
I think it's an engineering feat. I can't wait to have a go and a pair. But yeah, so available on the Asics website. Well, they'll probably be sold out by the time this comes out, I'd imagine.
I hope so.
And it's going to retail New Zealand wise for $550.
Yep.
And then into selected run doors for February 2026. So we will have another hit, which there'll be no update. Same colour, or you don't know yet?
No, it's an update colour. So there's an update colour in December, and then there's the colour in February it's another colour.
So we'll call this white colour the prototype colour, and then there'll probably be another colour for February, which we will have limited amounts, because I can imagine making that material is expensive and takes some time.
Yeah, there actually is a global allocation on it, so we only get allocated. That's where this is a good example where we don't really have a say in that. Look, over a period of time, I would say once they go to the next iteration, then I'm sure they'll expand that out, and we'll be able to purchase a few more. But at the same breath, we don't want to flood the market with this type of product.
You want the right people wearing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely right.
Not many people will be able to wear it, put it that way.
I was at the Podiatry, New Zealand Podiatry had their conference on the weekend on Saturday, and there were various people presenting. We presented on trail. but the one thing that came through with the just chatting with them at morning tea and lunch and so on, some of those podiatrists around New Zealand, not just here in Christchurch, but New Zealand, they are starting to see some of the consumers coming to see them where they shouldn't perhaps be wearing
100%
carbon product.
Yep.
And so, because there's a downside to that,
Yep.
if you don't get that right, which again, I would come back to saying, if you're going to get into carbon, make sure you get the right advice, see the right people that know what they're talking about.
I couldn't agree with you more.
We saw it in the weekend, didn't we? Oscar's been on his carbon detox and then put a pair on and his calves were bloody ruined afterwards.
My body's still sore.
Yeah.
Hamstring positive.
Same deal with me, yeah.
Yeah, and you guys are at the elite, so from a recreational perspective, you just got to be careful. I mean, we see that, you touched on it. We sit at the Auckland Marathon and we do a shoe count, and I love that because you get to see some scary things as well as you get to really get some insight into what's going on. And I don't want to sound too critical, but there are too many consumers going into their product that it's not suitable for them.
And what's really interesting that before we move on to the trail stuff is we know that if the performance benefit is 3% for the sake of a round number, the foam is making up 2.4% of that.
Yep.
The plate is responsible for about 0.6 or 0.7, but almost 100% of the damage.
Yeah, yeah, correct.
So if you can have a Sonic Blast or a Mega Blast or whatever from any other brand that is the fun foam and is stable enough for you to run for 3, 4, 5 hours in, you get no risk of the rigidity of the plate, but all the benefit of the foam. I think Nike did a test themselves. Like they took a pair of Vaporflies as they are, a pair of Vaporflies with a snapped plate, and then a pair of Vaporflies with no plate. And they took 45 athletes of all different abilities. They did it over 3 weeks, every Wednesday, same day, and they did testing 5 by 5 minutes in this, 5 by 5 minutes in that, and 5 by 5 minutes in this, and it was almost identical.
Yeah,
there was only 0.4% difference between the perfectly fine pair of Vaporfly and the non-plated Vaporfly.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah.
But no damage risk,
Yeah.
I guess, particularly at the hip. But anyway, sorry.
Well, I was telling Tom before, when I took, literally I run for, let's say 6K around the block, roughly, takes me half an hour. And I put the Mega Blast on the weekend. I thought, right, I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to try and not go intentionally faster. I'm going to try and keep the exertion exactly the same. And that's hard because you're putting a shoe on that feels like it's just trampoline you forward. But so I said, okay, let's just stay at the same exertion rate. And I took 2 to 3 minutes off the time. It was like I did nothing for it.
Just as another side quest, you're normally a Kayano wearer, right?
Yep.
How did you feel that for stability's sake?
Oh, fine.
You were okay?
Because it's just, it's catapulting you through the mid-foot into forefoot. So you're not spending much time, even for me, you didn't feel like you're spending much time on the ground. And I'd have to say just the emotional experience of how much fun it feels like, it was pretty special.
Yeah, cool.
I get to a hill and these days I find that quite hard to get up the hill, whereas I've just found this, just felt like it was springing up the hill.
And the hill's an interesting subject because we talk about this a lot with people doing hill work. You don't actually want a plate to run up a hill because you can't get purchased out of the eccentric movement. So actually a slightly more flexible forefoot is better for hill running.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of hills, we're going to talk about trail shoes now. What are the biggest opportunities you see in the trail running market, and what is Asics' strategy moving forward? Do you think we've seen the best from the trail shoes yet?
No, nowhere near it.
Yeah.
No, I think some of the stuff we're seeing, I've only seen photos of it, but some of the stuff coming out for back half 26 is looking unreal.
Yeah.
I think at the moment, trail's now getting to that space, which is where you're going to see a lot more of this new materials coming through, like the Trabuco 14. When does that land? I think it's February next year. That's got Flight Foam Blast Max in it. So effectively it's it's a firmer Nova Blast. So again, you're getting more pop, more vibrancy in your run. I think you're going to see a lot of innovation in trail. I mean, trail in New Zealand is running at the growth rate there is huge. Globally, trail is the biggest growth category, not just in our brand, but biggest growth category in running, if you include running, road running and trail. So trail is growing rapidly, and I think you're going to see, particularly from an Asics perspective, but other brands as well, I think you're going to see a lot of investment in trail, which I think is going to be fun. The challenge I think you've got, because funny enough, that was something we presented at the Podiatry New Zealand conference on the weekend, is the word trail is too broad.
Yes.
and so we've then got to say, okay, I'm running trail, but within that, then what am I doing? So is it, we've had this discussion around what words we're going to use. So for the sake of this, this conversation, is it technical trail? Is it groomed trail? Is it, and then within groomed, is it a runnable trail or a forest floor trail? What is it? And so you look at all the regional parks and regional runs around New Zealand. I mean, they're groomed trail.
Yeah.
So, okay, what type of product can we wear within that? And then if you go and do coast to coast, well, we would describe probably that as more technical trail because you're creating your own path, aren't you? You're not following a path. You're just trying to get from one destination to the next, and you're jumping over boulders and tree roots and whatever. So, I think it's going to come back to, I think, this education piece is saying, okay, these shoes are designed for this specific part of trail, and then these shoes are designed for that.
A lot more variables in there.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And then again, I think that's what we'll start to see. One, the consumer enjoy it. We'll have a lot more fun with the product because then, you can sort of see what's going to happen there. So you'll all of a sudden have shoes that if you're on a groomed trail and you want to get up and go, well, then they're going to start using some of these new materials.
I think it's an exciting space for the athletes.
Big time.
And we are starting to see, I think the trail must have the most amount of small little niche brands. You got like Norda and Normal and Speed Play and I can't think of any off the top of my head. North Face, all these kind of little niche things, kind of almost laying the groundwork for the big guys. That worked, that didn't.
Yeah.
They're concentrating on this stuff in the meantime, and then we're going to come in and just see this explosion of kind of fun tech. One piece of language I kind of liked was you'd have like man-made trails, and then non.
Yeah, I think it's a good description.
And so your man-made, like your gravel, kind of carved out. You could drive a 4-wheel tractor on it if you needed to, and then not. And then it's educating people around because people see lug depth and they assume that means it's grippy. And you go, well, actually, you're trying to educate them around, is it a firm rubber? Is it a soft rubber? Does it stick? Does it bite? And all those different kind of languages. And not that I'm a trail expert, but there is still some confusion. And I don't know, like in the trail space, if we kind of pick on Salomon, La Sportiva, maybe some of those other kind of specific trail brands, they probably don't educate like the road brands do yet in that space like we do on the road. And so we're moving into that.
Well, I think I've only seen a glimpse of this, and again, not calling out all brands, I'd put us in there, but I think some of the testing historically that's been done on the trail market and trail shoes has been quite old-fashioned. So I think but with the new technologies going on, you're going to see a lot more of the testing actually happening out in the marketplace, and with more sophistication around, as you said, the various surfaces you're on and materials versus being in a lab and putting a couple of uneven surfaces on a bit of wood and saying, okay, run across that. Those days are gone. So I think you'll see a lot. I think you'll see the industry move really fast in trail, and I'm with you on that. I think selfishly, brands like Asics, but I think others, I'm sure. I think some of the biggest sports footwear brands are going to move really fast on trail. I mean, it's happening now. Yeah. It's definitely happening, which I think is exciting.
So, what's Greig Bramwell's perfect shoe rotation currently?
Only 2025 product only.
Yeah. Well, no, I have been told off on that. Well, right now, right now would be, and I rotate within a few, but I would say I love the Kayano 32. I've really enjoyed that. I'm really enjoying that a lot more than 30-31. So Kayano 32's been really good. I actually haven't gone into the GD2000 yet, but I think that I like the sound of that because, again, that's using that Flight Foam Blast Max. It's a bit poppier, a bit more responsive. That's not in there at the moment, but I think it will be. But I'd say it's Kayano 32. I then now have just dropped in the Mega Blast because it's so much fun. I had the Super is in there as well. Nova's in there. I've probably got 5. I'd say it's Nimbus, Kayano, Mega, Super, Nova. And look, I'm a bit spoiled because I'm sample size as well. So I can sort of get away with it. But I think what's really neat is and it's sort of back what you talked about even around that sort of stability, the historical piece, is that you're now crossing over into, cushioning shoes, neutral shoes, whatever you want to call them, structured cushioning shoes. You can mix and match. Because I think what we have learned in all this research is the more variety you have of footwear and surface and distance and speed, the less likelihood of a repetitive injury.
So when this comes out, we're going to be in Tokyo and watching some world champs, athletics world champs.
Yeah.
What events are you most excited to?
I think we're going to be very privileged to see some pretty special events. I don't know if I can nail one, to be honest. I think we'll see the 100-meter final. I think we see the 200. I think we're going to see the 10,000. And then I think we see the finish of both marathons as well. So we've got a pretty jam-packed couple of days, which I'm sure you're going to try and fit in a couple of runs as well. I was lucky enough to go to Oregon, and that was the first time I'd gone to a World Athletics event. And I walked away from that saying, to me, that's the best sporting event I've ever been to. And I've been lucky enough to go to a couple of other like Rugby World Cup and various other things. That World Champs is unbelievable. Like, it's hard to keep, you literally get a sore neck because you're just looking, everything's happening.
Good athletics is a special place to be.
Yeah. And at Oregon, we were a bit naughty because we had really good seats, but in the end, on the last day, and it was the 4x100, and we said, stuff this. Let's just go and try and stand on the turn, and that was like watching a thoroughbred horse going. And I know that sounds really inappropriate, but it was like astonishing watching this athlete go on the bend. And then what they did, and I'm sure they'll do it in Tokyo, but they literally have the speed of the athlete being shown on the big screen, and that was just astonishing.
When the 100 guys and girls get rolling starts, they are
gone.
It's
next level.
Yeah.
You think you've seen speed, and then what was that the first time I watched Zoe Hobbs run?
Yeah.
And you stand at the 40-meter mark and you watch her in full flight, and you're like, fuck me.
Yeah,
it is so fast.
Yeah, it's so fast. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And from a brand perspective, they're obviously one of the major sponsors of the World Champs, and it's a really neat. It's a fantastic celebration of the sport, or athletics, and the brand within that. Which is, so I suspect you'll get to see some of the new stuff as well, which will be pretty cool.
It'll be epic. I guess this is a very open-ended question, but what's next for Asics?
That is a great question.
I'm not sure. Yeah,
I don't know. One of their key sayings is Kaizen. So Kaizen is that, forever just small steps and it's not ripping things apart. It's just evolving on an ongoing basis. And again, that's the Japanese belief. And, I think you're going to see that. I think you'll definitely see that continue. I think they've, excuse the pun, but I think they've certainly got some runs on the board around some of this new innovative product. And I think they're now getting a lot more confident with where they're heading in that space. I don't know if I'm really answering your question. I just think you're going to see some more and more exciting new products where you're going to see some of these foams coming into the everyday running shoe, and that's going to be pretty neat. At a cost-effective, price for that consumer that perhaps is a little more price conscious, can't afford it, or doesn't want to step up into that. So that's going to be fun.
Continuous evolution.
I think it is.
Put that on a billboard.
Yes.
That's right. That's right.
I'm going to attempt to land the plane because I think we've managed to keep you for 75 minutes, and you're a busy man. You got a busy afternoon. Busy evening.
My son is graduating university tomorrow, which he's the first
unreal
family member to graduate.
Mate, you must be proud as punch.
Yeah, I am. He's way better than me.
That's what you want, though, right?
No, that's right. And then my daughter should be in a couple of years, which would be pretty neat too. So look, it's neat to be down here, and I really appreciate your time.
I think for me, like, you're an integral part of the industry, yourself and the brand, and the kind of the stepping stones for Tom and I to be able to sit here every week and talk rubbish and have people interested in shoes. Asics plays a massive part in that, and in your turn in that too. So I appreciate you taking your time. I can't wait to watch the 10,000 metre final in Tokyo. So thank you for that opportunity. Not much gets me more excited about shoes, but that might be the one thing that does. And I'm looking forward to continuing on and seeing all this new product come through in the next however many years we both decide to do this.
I agree. Thanks, guys. Very enjoyable.
See ya.